Hey people, I've persuaded myself to record my voice again to explain what this Matchbox shader does, GlueP. It's called GlueP because it lets you glue stuff onto position passes from CG. So I've got this CG house render here, and it's come with a position world pass which looks like a bunch of crazy colour. But we can use this to stick something onto the surface of the CG. So for an example, I'm just going to paint something on one frame. And freeze it with a mux, and then plug it into the shader, and you'll see it follows the CG. If I comp that over the original, it'll be more obvious. So you can see it's stuck to the surface of the CG for the whole sequence. And as well as mattes, we can project textures onto the surface of that CG. Like I've just plugged a frame of wood in here, and we can put a matte through at the same time. I've just drawn around this triangle of the roof, and if we use that matte comp, it lets us just replace the texture on just part of the render. So I'm going to go through how to set this up for this render from scratch. The first input is the front, and the second's the optional matte, and the third's the important one, which is the position pass. And as soon as you plug them in, you should see it do something, but the projector's probably not in a sensible place. You can move it around manually like this, but that is kind of time consuming and not much fun. So what I really recommend doing is getting the CG camera into action via FBX, and then using those numbers to put the projector in the right place. So I just imported this camera from an FBX like normal. The scale of the camera has to match the scale of the position pass. So a lot of the time you probably want to set the import scale to 1. And choose a frame where you want the projection to be stuck from. I'm using frame 45 here. And copy and paste the camera position and rotation and field of view from the action camera onto the Matchbox. So this bit's slightly boring, but I think it's hopefully worth it. If you find out imported camera's position, copy it, and then go to the Matchbox, paste it on position, and same with rotation. And the same with field of view, which is called FOV on the action camera. And now you've done that, you want to set key and keep on those channels, so those values are static. And now you should see it's immediately stuck to the surface. And you get a matte output as well. And you can see something's gone a bit strange here because the projector hits all surfaces of the CG, not just the front one. And to sort that out, we've got controls for depth clip here. So if we look at our comp and adjust that, we can clip out the problem areas. It helps adjusting these if you just turn one of these on, so you can see where your clipping planes are. So now we've done that, you can see it's no longer projecting through onto the stuff underneath. And so there we go, that's basically how you make it work. I'm going to look at a slightly more complicated example over here. We've got a little render of a CG mouse, and obviously as well as the camera moving here, we've got objects that move, in fact a mesh that's deforming. We can still make this work in the right way, as long as we get the right position pass from CG. And here we have, because I rendered it myself, it's this prest pass. So again, I'm just going to paint something on one frame. I'm just going to paint something very stupid on one frame. And we freeze it with a mux on the frame we painted it on. And then we do the same thing. If we look at the comp, you'll see it's stuck to that deforming mesh. And again, we want to adjust the depth clip to stop it hitting this background. So if we look at the comp and tweak this, we can make it only hit the mouse. There we go. So some more options in here. We can see this is actually projected through the mouse onto his back, which is often not what you want to do. And we can fix this as long as you've got a world normals pass, and we do here. So if we plug it in, you can then switch between showing the ones that face the projector, which are these ones, and the ones facing away, which are the ones on his back that we probably don't want. So that's how the shader works. I'm going to go into exactly what kind of world position pass you need, because there are lots of world position passes out there that are made in different ways, and it's really best to get this one kind that works properly. An easy way to make sure that you're getting the world position pass that you need is to plug it into a position node in Action. For this example, I'm going to plug in this one, which does work. And you should see basically the layout of your scene should be the same. And if we look at it in working view, you should see that it fills the camera view of your imported CG camera pretty completely, even when you scrub in time. If you get other kinds of position pass, when you plug them into that, you'll see they do all kinds of stupid, crazy things. Like this is upside down, it's nowhere near the camera view, and it moves in a very strange way. So if possible, get the right kind. And the kind of position pass that we're looking for is it's the most obvious kind, really. It's just got the coordinates of the object as RGB colours. So if we look at the front corner of this house, you see the colour is kind of 74, 33, 20, minus 22. And if we just check that out in 3D, we can see that this green box on the corner of the house is in fact exactly 73, 33 and minus 22. So that is what you need to make it work. Sometimes you'll get position passes that don't quite look like that, because another common format is to have the camera space position pass, which usually looks kind of like this. It's usually blue and purple, and if you look at the color values, they usually go from minus to positive in red for X and green for Y here, and the blue is usually a kind of a depth value, which is usually quite big for far away objects. And if you do have these passes, there are some conversion options in here which can allow you to use them. And to do that, you need to have the animated CG camera stuff linked to these controls here. So I'm just going to do that so that we can see that it works with this one. I'm going to link the action camera position onto here, and rotation onto here. And then if we turn convert on, you can see it's working properly. It's kind of annoying having to make all those expression links, but there you go. If you really need to use a camera space position pass, at least you can. And these extra output options not necessarily useful, but one that might be handy is the output UVs, which instead of doing the projection, outputs a UV map, so you can map whatever you want onto it. And that's especially useful because you can use this Matchbox shader, which has better filtering than GlueP does by itself. So if we just plug the front and the UV pass into that, you can see it works in exactly the same way, and you can adjust the sharpness a bit, which can be important, especially when you're changing the scale of stuff a lot. So there you go. I hope that's a fun thing to play with. Go wild painting things on CG. I'm now going to go into how to make those position passes from Houdini and Maya. So if you're a Flame or Smoke, you probably don't need to listen to the rest of this, but you might want to show it to CG people so they can give you passes that work well. I'm going to start with the simplest one, which is the house. In Houdini, the default position pass that you'll get out is in camera space. So it's got this cross which pretty much doesn't move as you move in time, and it's got the depth in the blue channel. But it's pretty easy to change that for a world space position pass. If we just go in the shader, if we get the position and then use a transform node to go from camera to world, and a parameter node to export it to a new layer. If we look at that new layer, you'll see it's what we want. So if we look at the colour of that corner again, you'll see that it's 73.33 and about -22 again. And the same applies to the normals. If you need the normals, you can just use transform from camera to world, export them to a new variable name, and then in Matra you can use that variable as one of your extra image planes. And it's also probably a good idea to change to closest surface filtering and closest sample here. That disables the anti-aliasing basically, which usually gives you a better result than the built-in p-pass, which is anti-aliased. And now the mouse in Houdini. This is a bit more complicated because it's got a mesh that deforms. So if we do that same trick, the colours of the mesh would change as it moved through space. But it's not too hard to sort it out so they don't. What I usually do is use the rest position node on the object to put the values of each vertex at frame 1. To do that, I've just got a voxel which does nothing but transform from object space to world. This time shift just freezes it at frame 1, and then we attach it with the rest position node. And you can see that at frame 1 the position is the same as the rest, but the rest doesn't change as you scrub, whereas the position does. And in the shader we can use that with a parameter node and output it to a new layer. Here I've connected it so that if that rest parameter is not bound, it'll just use the normal global world space P. So for non-animating objects, it'll still work even if you don't have the rest position attached. And if we look at that in the render view, you can see that the mouse starts off green, and at the very end he's got the same colours on him. The colours have stuck to him as he animates. And you can do pretty much the same thing for the normals. Our normal is the rest normals that are attached by that rest node. And now for Maya, the easy one is the house. All I've done here is use the standard mental ray, normal world and world position passes that you get from the render settings. It's worth just double clicking them and making sure that it's set to world position and world space in the normal output. So that's a pretty easy option for static objects where the camera just moves in Maya. If we load the world position paths and F-check, you can see it looks like what we want. And now the mouse in Maya, which is a little bit more complicated, unfortunately. In this scene, there's a couple of shaders. There's this one which just has a sampler info, which has the point world position connected to the out color on the shader, which has pretty much the same effect as the mental rays built in pass. But that only works for static objects. If you've got an animated mesh, the thing I figured out, which is a little bit awkward to do, is to use vertex colors to attach the world position at frame 1 and then have it follow for the rest of the animation. So in the shader it's fairly simple. It's the shape node and it's just got the color set output plugged into a mental ray vertex colors node, and that's plugged straight into the shader. To get the world space positions on the vertex colors is a little bit kind of ugly. You have to make a color set. Obviously I've just got one called color set here, and then I use this tiny little mail script which just loops through every vertex in the selected object and sets the vertex color to the point position. And after doing that, we can see that this guy's got vertex colors which stick to him as he animates. That's a slightly awkward way to do it, especially because you need to use a separate shader for each object, because this mental ray vertex colors node has to be connected to each shape node separately. If anyone out there knows a better way to do this in Maya or for V-Ray or Arnold, I would love to hear about it, because this is slightly annoying. That's all. If you've got any problems, or if you need more detailed instructions to render the right passes, you can send me a little email. My email address, as usual, is lewis@lewissaunders.com.